The best and worst case scenarios for the UFC in 2025. I'm starting off with heavyweight. For heavyweight, I think the worst case scenario is that this John Jones, Tom Aspinall situation continues for another month or so. I mean, we all know what's going on. I don't have to explain it. John Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall, and the UFC is refusing to strip him. I don't know why this is still going on, but I mean, this is ruining the heavyweight division right now. This needs to stop, but it would get even worse if Gon KOs Aspinall when they fight. I mean, Gon versus Aspinall is pretty much already confirmed. Not officially, but I mean, we know it's happening. We know that it's not going to be Jones versus Aspinall. And the absolute worst thing that could ever happen is if Gunn just flatline KOs Aspinall. I mean, that would just be so brutal for the UFC fans, and then John Jones would be so happy. He would be tweeting, being like, "This is the guy you were hyping up." I mean, I destroyed this guy, and he knocks out. It would just be the worst we've ever seen. It would be it would be so bad. Like I'm literally just thinking about this right now. If this does happen, like the UFC have they just get rid of the heavyweight division. If this happens, get rid of the heavyweight division in the UFC because everything is totally ruined. It's most likely not going to happen. Most likely Aspinall is going to piece up Gon and KO him in like 2 minutes. But I mean, it's a fight. It's a fight. Anything can happen. So that would be the worst case scenario by a long shot, right? Best case scenario is that Aspinall versus Jones does actually happen, and then Aspinall knocks out Jones easily or submits him. I don't care. I just want Aspinall to finish him. Now, I should have been realistic when making this because this is not happening. And we all know at this point the fight's not going to happen. Jones has said he's done. There's not a fight booked, and the UFC is still trying to push that it may happen. It's not happening. There's no way it's happening. I mean, it's gone on for way too long. This fight is not happening. But and then let's just assume that fight at first does happen. What would make it even better is if then Francis comes over from the PFL. At that point, his contract would be done, and then fights Aspinall. That would be an insane super fight, right? Let's say Aspinall versus Jones does happen, and Aspinall does finish Jones. The star power of Tom Aspinall is going to go through the roof. It's going to be crazy. He's going to be so marketable, so promotable. He's going to become a superstar. He already is a pretty big star, but if he beats John Jones, like it would go to a whole nother level. Like the casual fan base, everybody would be on Aspinall. And then Francis versus Aspinall, that is a huge, huge super fight, and that would save the heavyweight division if this could ever happen. It would best case scenario. Will this happen? I mean, we got like a 2% chance that the Aspinall versus Jones fight actually happens. Let's be real. So it's unlikely, but hey, it's best case scenario for the reason it is the best thing that could possibly happen. But let's move on to light heavyweight now. For light heavyweight, the worst case scenario I put if Pereira just retires. We all want to see the rematch between Pereira and Magomed Ankolive, right? It was a close fight, but Ankolive did win pretty decisively. But Pereira still won 2 rounds, right? He did win 2 rounds. And, I could see him having a lot more success in a rematch. And he's taking his time, right? Pereira is taking his time, and he deserves that. He's stepped up for the UFC on so many different occasions and saved cards with crazy finishes, crazy knockouts, fighting when he wasn't anywhere near 100%. He deserves this time that the UFC is giving him. But worst case scenario is that he retires, and then instead Ankalaev fights Yuri and beats Yuri by a boring decision, by holding him against the fence the entire time. I mean, Yuri is excitement in the light heavyweight division, and Ankalaev is the exact opposite of excitement in the light heavyweight division, right? So, if Ankalaev does beat Yuri, that's really gonna suck because I mean, then what do we have? We have Khalil possibly. If Khalil beats Hale, Khalil is an exciting fighter who I could see him having success against Ankalaev, but yeah, this is just worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is just Ankalaev like goes on a title run at 205. Nobody wants to see this guy as champion, especially in like a heavier weight classes where you can get knockouts and stuff like that, and just we don't want to see this guy as champion, right? But the best case scenario Pereira comes back and then KOs Ankolive in the rematch. I mean, we all want to see that happen, right? It would feel amazing. Everybody loves Pereira. I get that some people don't like his fan base, but come on, you want to see Pereira fight. And then after that, Pereira should retire, right? I think that's the best case scenario. And then we can get a fight for the vacant belt, right? I don't think if Pereira comes back and beats Ankolive, I don't think he should continue fighting. I mean, he doesn't have anything else to prove, really. He's not going to heavyweight. Heavyweight's already so screwed up. That's just not going to happen, and I don't think it should happen. I just think he has one more fight, win or lose against Ankalaev. He should retire right then and there, in my opinion. And I think that's the best for the sport as well. But assuming this happens, then Yuri could fight Khalil for a vacant belt, right? Because Khalil versus Hale is happening. I think like next week, right? That's going to be an exciting fight. Um, assuming Khalil wins, and I want Khalil to win, I think that's the better case scenario for the UFC. I think Jamal Hill's just this guy that we want to see lose over and over and over again because it's kind of funny at this point. But I do have a second best case scenario for the UFC is if Reyes continues his KO streak and eventually earns a title shot and wins. You know, Reyes has one of the most interesting stories in the UFC. You know, he beat John Jones, but the judges did not give him the decision. And then he goes on a crazy losing streak, and now he's coming back, and it would feel so amazing to see Reyes finally get that belt around his waist just like he deserves. It would be so good. It would be amazing to see, and I want to see it happening. So either of these two scenarios, I think would be the best case for the UFC because people would love to see Reyes, get a title shot and win. It would be like Dustin Poirier winning a winning a championship. That's what it would be like. It would be amazing. But let's move on to middleweight now. Worst case scenario is if Hamza pulls out against DDP and then a Mavov beats DDP. Or I have another one, but I'm going to talk about this for a second. Hamza, he's pulled out of a lot of UFC fights. I don't know how many, but he can't pull out of this one, man. This is like the biggest fight. This is a huge fight. Hamza versus DDP is so huge and such a necessary fight for International Fight Week. And this fight needs to happen because I don't want to see DDP versus Amavov. But the other worst case scenario, let's say Hamza beats DDP, the fight actually does happen. Hamza beats DDP, then becomes an inactive champion who pulls out of fights. I mean, Hamza right now, he doesn't have the best track record for activity. You know, back in the day, he used to fight a lot. Like he fought like twice in like 10 days at one time, I'm pretty sure, but he hasn't really done that since then. He's missed weight by crazy amounts, gotten sick so many times with his immune system, and if he is a champion, sure, he has a crazy amount of star power. Like this dude has like 10 million followers on Instagram and he's not even a champion. It's kind of insane and he really is a big draw. But I mean, okay, first off, DDP is the most underrated champion in the UFC right now. He's active, he's having good fights, he's entertaining, he's amazing on the mic, and he's setting a great standard for the middleweight division. And I just don't think Hamzat can live up to that as a champion, right? I don't think he's going to be anywhere near as active. I don't think he's going to fight 2 times a year. He's probably going to fight maybe once a year if we're lucky. And let's see if he can even make weight, right? At UFC 308, they had to extend the weigh-ins for an extra hour just so he could barely make 186, right? So it does kind of make you a little bit nervous for this upcoming fight. But there's a best case scenario. The best case scenario is that DDP beats Hamzat, RDR beats Whitaker, and then we get to see DDP versus RDR. And I know Amavov is in line for a title shot. I know the truth is, I just don't want to see Amavov get a title shot yet or as champion. I get that he knocked out Izzy. I just don't think he has the most superstar power. He's not that big of a star. He's not that big of a draw. He's not even that entertaining. I don't, you can say this is a hot take, but if RDR beats Whitaker, yeah, sure, I think Amava would probably deserve it more, but I don't care. I want to see RDR versus DDP because it's such a silly fight, such a goofy fight. It would be so entertaining, and I just think it has the potential to be a great fight. And RDR, I mean, he's getting hyped up right now, on this little win streak he's going on in the UFC. I like it, and I'm here for it, and I want to see it. And yeah, moving on to welterweight. That's all I put for the best case for middleweight. Moving on to welterweight. The worst case scenario. is that JDM beats Makachev. All right, I'm gonna explain this all, but JDM beats Makachev, and then we get Shavkat, and Shavkat beats JDM. So let me explain this real quick. Now, this is definitely gonna be a hot take, most likely. I mean, the reason that I want Makachev to beat JDM, I just want to see Makachev become arguably the greatest of all time. I want to see him continue this win streak, and I want to see him be dominant, and I want to see the UFC have a new potential GOAT. I mean, people already put him in the top five, but if he beats, if he beats JDM, then gets another win at welterweight, I mean, he might be the greatest of all time. He's going to be in that discussion for sure, right? But there's no hate to JDM. I mean, he's super entertaining. But the reason I put that is the worst case scenario, because let's say then we get Shavkat versus JDM, and Shavkat beats JDM. I do not want to see Shavkat as a champion. This is another hot take, right? A lot of people love Shavkat, but I don't find his fights that entertaining. I know he gets a lot of finishes. I know he finished everybody except Ian Gary, but I mean, the dude fights like once a year at most. And I mean, sure, he's undefeated, which is, marketable. And he's an interesting guy, but he is kind of an aura merchant, right? And I just don't think he's going to be that exciting of a champion. His fight with Ian Gary, it wasn't very, there wasn't much volume in that fight. And I just don't really want to see Shavkat as a champion, especially with all these other guys. We have like Sean Brady, Joaquin Buckley, and Islam at welterweight. I don't want Shavkat, and Shavkat has missed his chance at the title shot many times just because he doesn't fight. He fights like less than once a year. So personally, I think the worst case scenario is that Shavkat becomes the welterweight champion. But however, best case scenario, I think that if Makachev beats JDM, Topuria beats Charles, and then they fight at welterweight, we get Makachev versus Topuria at welterweight. Here's the thing. The Makachev versus Topuria fight was bigger and better at lightweight at 155 because I mean we have this new generation of welterweights that are like doing amazing, that are going on crazy tears right now, like Joaquin Buckley, JDM, Sean Brady. We have those guys in the mix, and it does kind of suck that it could be a world where the welterweight title fight is between a former 155er and a former 145er. But I mean, you have to admit, it's an unbelievably huge fight. Topuria trying to be the first triple champion in the world against Makachev is a huge fight. Unbelievably huge fight. But I do see it does kind of suck how it kind of holds up the rest of the division. I wish this fight would have happened at 155, but it's just not going to. But there is another best case scenario because I do see the downside of this. Or if JDM beats Islam, and then we get JDM versus Brady slash Buckley. JDM versus anybody but Shavkat, okay? Because, if JDM does beat Islam, it's going to be okay. JDM still has very entertaining fights, is a great champion. I'm sure he's going to be pretty active. I think he's planning on, he just went on a war with, Bilal Muhammad, so we can give him time, of course. But I'd love to see JDM versus Brady slash Buckley, see these new guys at welterweight, see what they can do best. The only problem with this is it kind of, ruins the Topuria Makachev fight. But moving on to lightweight. Okay, just hear me out for these, all right? So the worst case scenario, I'll explain this all in a minute, all right? You gotta stay with me. But the worst case scenario is that Charles beats Topuria, and then Charles retires, vacating the belt. And then due to the vacant belt, Holloway versus Porier becomes a fight for the lightweight belt instead of the BMF belt. I could actually see a world where this happens, and you might be thinking, this is amazing. Why would you not want this? Just hear me out, okay? The next one, Porier beats Holloway and then retires, leaving the belt vacant. All right, now let me explain all of this, right? I love Charles Oliveira. I want him to succeed. It would be amazing to see him win against Topuria. But let's be real. Oliveira needs to lose against Topuria. If Charles does beat Topuria, he's most likely going to retire, and it's going to be a vacant belt, and it's going to kind of ruin the division. We have Ilia Topuria, whose hype is completely gone. Islam Makachev, the former champion, he's not there anymore. He's moved up, and it's just going to seem like the lightweight champion isn't the real champion. But it can get even worse, right? If Charles does beat Topuria and then retires, I could 1,000,000% see Holloway versus Porier becoming for a lightweight title. And I think that would be a great idea by the UFC. It would be super fun. It gives these guys an extra chance to win a belt, you know? It would be great to see. But if Poirier beats Holloway, we all want to see Dustin Poirier. I literally just said that like Dustin Poirier, it would be amazing to see him win a title. It would be so amazing. It would be a great moment for everybody. But if he does win the title, he's just going to retire and leaving the belt vacant. So you see what happens? Islam left the belt, the champion left, then Charles beats Topuria, then Charles leaves, now the belt's still vacant. Poirier beats Holloway, then Poirier retires, and now the belt's vacant again. I mean, it's going to kind of ruin the momentum of the lightweight division, and for a while, it's going to seem like whoever wins isn't the real champion. Like, what do you even do after that? What do you even do? Do you do like Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for a title? Like, what do you even do if this stuff does happen? Like, it would just kind of ruin the lightweight division. Now, I understand that it would be amazing to see Poirier win a belt, but from like the UFC standpoint, this is the worst case scenario because it just throws the lightweight division for a complete loop. However, best case scenario, Topuria beats Charles, and then Poirier beats Holloway, and then we get Topuria versus Poirier. And I know what you said. I know that Poirier is on his retirement fight, right? But is he? I mean, if Poirier beats Max Holloway, I mean, he's essentially in line for a title shot, let's be real, especially against Ilia Topuria. That's a huge fight. Now, Topuria has a lot of options. He's talked about going up to welterweight, but I would love, and I think it's a better idea, I would love to see Dustin stay around for a little bit longer and fight Topuria. He's finally fighting a striker for the belt. It would be such a good fight, and I'd love to see anybody win that fight. But or yeah, there's another best case scenario. If Paddy beats Gaethje, who's mostly, I mean, it looks like that fight's gonna happen. Then we get Paddy versus Topuria for the belt. I mean, we already know that these guys have beef. The fight's setting itself up. It would be a huge fight. And the craziest thing is, I think Paddy could actually maybe win this. He could maybe win this. I mean, I'm not saying he's likely to, but if Paddy has the perfect plan and he is able to have perfect execution like he did in the Michael Chandler fight, I could see a path to victory for him, right? So I think that those are the best case. That's the worst case. I think this one's going to be a little bit of a hot take. So you can let me know if you agree or just disagree with this one. Also, make sure to like the video, man. I'm just trying to make some money, you know, make some good content, get in the algorithm. So, like the video if you made it this far. Thank you. And let's continue with featherweight, right? I think the worst case scenario for featherweight is that if we get Volk versus Yair 2 and then Yair KOs Volk. Volk versus Yair 2 has been talked about, not confirmed, but it has been rumored, and I've seen a lot of news sources talking about this fight. If this fight does happen, this is a disgrace to the fan base and a disgrace to Volk and a disgrace to Evalev. We should be seeing Volk versus Evalev, right? That's just the truth, right? Nobody wants to see Yair after he just lost to Volk. He brutally lost to Volk like a year and a half ago or something, and he beat Patricio Pitbull in like an okay fight. No, I'm sorry, he does not deserve another title shot, even if it's for UFC Nache. Okay, I don't care. Or there's another one. If Evalev beats Volk, let's say we do get Evalev versus Volk, and then Evalev wins by boring decision. Look, Evalev deserves the title shot, but if he actually wins that fight, it's going to be bad for the UFC. I mean, Evalev, we need these more entertaining guys with more star power as champions, especially now where a lot of people think the UFC and the UFC champions are falling off. We need guys like Volkanovski to be champion and not Evalev. Sure, he's undefeated, which helps promote him, but as champion, I mean, he's not selling diddly. He's not selling a single damn pay-per-view. So, but the best case scenario is if we get Volk versus Evalev and then Volk wins and eventually John Silva works his way up the rankings and earns a title shot. John Silva is a very good prospect at featherweight, super entertaining, giving crazy knockouts, having fun fights, big fights. And, Volk, he's going to retire soon, but he does say he wants to go up to lightweight one more time, give it one more shot, and I think he deserves that. If he beats Evalev, I'm all for that, right? And then I think the best person to take Volk's place at featherweight is John Silva, if it could happen. He's a super entertaining guy, getting KOs, submitting Bryce Mitchell, having big fights. I said that, but I'd love to see him as a champion. Moving on to bantamweight. Worst case scenario for bantamweight is if Mario Batista works his way up to a title shot and beats Morab. And now Batista, he's on like what, like an 8 fight win streak. I do want Batista and Morab to fight soon because I mean at this point, who else does Morab have to fight? Sure, he's gonna fight Corey next, but Morab is most likely gonna win that, and I think Batista versus Morab could be a fun fight, but I don't want Batista to win. I mean, people don't like him, but it's kind of turning around though, after his last performance, people are kind of apologizing, but still, I still do not want him as champion. Sorry, not sorry. And Marcus McGee somehow beats Piotr Jan. I think that would be, oh, dude, the Piotr Jan versus Marcus McGee. I don't know what the UFC matchmakers were thinking when they booked this fight. But I mean, that would be worst case scenario. I mean, nobody wants to see Marcus McGee succeed against Piotr Jan. We all want to see Piotr Jan, win against Marcus McGee. Let's be real. However, the best case scenario, and this is something that I think the UFC really fumbled on. For some reason, Piotr Jan versus Marcus McGee doesn't happen, and then we get Piotr Jan versus Umar Nurmagomedov, right? This is what I think the UFC fumbled so badly on. Why did we not get Piotr Jan versus Umar Nurmagomedov? That would have been such an amazing fight. That probably would have been the most high skill fight potentially ever, It might sound a little bit crazy to say, but Piotr Jan versus Umar Nurmagomedov is an absolutely amazing fight that the UFC totally fumbled. And they were talking, and I thought they agreed to fight, but instead we get Jan versus Marcus McGee. Like, nobody wants to see that. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Piotr Jan. Just a beautiful fight. Beautiful fight. I'm really upset that didn't happen, but and let's say I want Morab to beat Corey, then we can get a super fight between Pantoja and Morab. There's really not many people for Morab to fight, but I do want to see Pantoja come up, assuming he beats Kaikara France and get a shot against Morab. I think that's a huge fight, a fun fight, and it would really help Morab's legacy if he were to win. Just moving on to flyweight, the last one, and I don't have much here, right? And I just want to say the reason I don't have too much here, flyweight's already not a very hyped up division, and honestly, not many things can change from like UFC pay-per-view sales, in my personal opinion, for this division. But I put the worst case scenario is that Joshua Van loses to Brandon Royval. And I know that people love Brandon Royval. I understand that. But Joshua Van is the best part of the flyweight division right now. I mean, Pantoja's a great champion, don't get me wrong, right? But I mean, nothing's kind of changed in the flyweight division for it feels like so long. Joshua Van is excitement in this division. He has great boxing. He's like a little Max Holloway, He's very exciting, and he's the only interesting thing really about the flyweight division. Now I know people like this might be a hot take as well. People like Kaikara France and all that stuff, but I think that's the worst case scenario. Now the best case scenario is that we eventually get to see Joshua Van fight Pantoja. And I know I'm not just, I feel like we've seen so much in the flyweight division already. We need a new face like Joshua Van fighting for the title. I want to see that. It would be great. And I want to see what Joshua Van can do in the future. I'm excited for his future. And yeah, that's all I put. The reason this is all I put is because, like, let's say Kai Kara France beats Pantoja. Is that going to really affect the UFC, like pay-per-view sales? Is that really a worst case scenario or best case scenario for the UFC? I don't think so. There's not really much, in my opinion, that can happen that completely entirely ruins the flyweight division. Van losing sucks. It does suck, but he's young. I mean, he's gonna come back, I'm sure. He's like, what, 23? He has time. And the best case scenario. I mean, it's just personal opinion, honestly, for this division. I feel like some people want Pantoja to win, other people want Kai France to win, but I feel like it's pretty even, right? So that's why this is all I put here. But you can let me know if you agree or disagree. There's some hot takes in this video, I'm sure. Some people won't agree with it all, but thank you guys for watching. That's about it. Peace.